live on YouTube. Starting soon, it's preparing the live stream. And my recording is trying to convert. Steve, did you have any issues with the recording for Planning Commission last week?
No.
Okay, great.
Okay, looks like we got most of you. Who are we missing? Brian. Okay. By the way, Joe Paul, we appreciate the background. It looks like you're having a good time in Hawaii.
Yeah, it's where I'd much rather be right now. Of course, I don't want to get on an airplane to go there, and I don't think I could swim it.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct. Okay, let's go ahead. What we're going to do is that first, let me just welcome everybody to the work session. Who we have online is we have Council Member Burrell, Council Member Wilson, Council Member Jackson, Council Member Paul. So appreciate you staying with us as we work through this. We don't have Council Member Saxton. With that, let me go ahead. We're going to basically try to get two presentations. The first one, Diane Wilson has requested a presentation from her, I guess it's research. You should have got a copy of that. So Diane, go ahead and go ahead and do your thing.
All right. I'll go ahead and try to get that so it's full screen. Oh, I know what I have to do.
You can do a share screen. There you go.
All right. So let's see if we've got. Okay, great. Thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you for a few minutes here. I just wanted to go over some of the research that I've been doing. And the question was asked, why did I do the research? And the first thing certainly is to understand the scope of form-based code from several different perspectives. And of course, with that, I would wanted to be able to share that if at all possible. And then an important question was to determine if the form-based code document was modifiable or if a different approach would be necessary. And that was kind of where I was starting with that. This is just kind of an idea of some of the outside references. Poor Steve, he probably got tired of being the only reference. So I went ahead and talked with all of these different entities. If there's anyone here that you're interested in getting some of their feedback, just let me know. I'm very happy to do that. We also have some excellent written feedback that I can get to you as well. And so with that kind of being said, we'll just kind of jump in. The first thing that I noticed that was actually really quite landmark for me, or maybe very surprising, was the notice and public awareness situation. I was very surprised that there were so many business owners that were unaware of this. The only reason that they, of course, business owners that are property owners were notified, but business owners weren't. And just to kind of go over that more specifically, out of around 185 businesses in our district, and the businesses are probably one of the most important people that are being impacted by form-based code. There were about 143 of them that didn't have notice, because 42 of them do own their own property. And so I thought that was a very important thing to keep in mind, and that letting them know was very important. In fact, probably over 75% of our businesses don't own their property. With that being said, I also wanted to address the property owners. And the property owners did receive a letter, or at least a few of them remember receiving the letter, but they were concerned as I talked to them because they had no idea what the impact of this letter was. And here's just a copy. One of the gentlemen sent me a copy of the letter he received. And if you look at that first paragraph, it says, the Roy City Planning Commission will be holding a public hearing to consider the following action to amend those particular zones, which had commercial and residential in it, to a mixed use zone named Downtown District. So this gentleman thought, I own a business and rental properties. And when I read the letter, I thought, oh, they're just changing the name to encompass all of the uses, and had no idea what it really meant and what that impact was. He was hoping it wasn't meant to be misleading, but certainly the thought was something that had crossed his mind. And this is just a quick graph that shows the property owner's perception of notification. That many people didn't even realize that they had been notified. One of the interesting things that I've come up with was the perception of the people I've talked to of the city's attitude. It was really nice to hear that over the last 2 years, since the mayor has been in, there has been a dramatic improvement and perception that the city listens to the citizens. And so I just wanted the mayor to know that your name was brought up many times in that regard. There were some people that felt the city only did the bare minimum, but the increasing rate of those citizens that felt the city was trying to foster a relationship was good. And they wanted us to continue that. Don't slow up, keep working on that relationship. And in regards to that, 75% of the people that did give input said they really would like to be notified and they'd like to be involved, and they're hoping that we could come up with some more creative ways. They said that they really liked the Roy connection and the Facebook, and if we could keep coming up with some other ideas for that, they would appreciate it, to give them some more detail and more improvement there. So then the next step was to talk to some of the leaders from other cities. And one of the first questions that was asked was, why does Roy need a form-based code? And then, what are the goals that Roy wants to accomplish with form-based code? And some of that we've kind of talked about loosely, and some of that will be coming up. But they wanted me to remember that form-based code is a tool, and they wanted me to keep it in mind, right? Us as a city, is form-based code the best tool to accomplish whatever goals we decide on? And it was an interesting thing. When I first heard about form-based code, it was just called mixed use, kind of in that letter, like they were saying, we're going to do it to a mixed use code. But these other city leaders wanted to clarify form-based code equals mixed use, but mixed use does not equal form-based code. Some of the tools that the leaders commented on, that form-based code as a tool was very good to increase housing density in their areas, but they were concerned that it didn't protect commercial very well. In fact, Clearfield, who is quite hopeful that their recently adopted form-based code will be helpful, went to a hybrid where they took, and they were so concerned about losing their commercial because of some of the things that were coming up. They have 3 tiers on their hybridization. They have one area that's just commercial, they have an area that is mixed use, and then they have an area that is residential, increased density residential only. And that was something that they have done to try to help with that. Several cities also wanted to remind me that form-based code increases administrative work and time extensively, and hopefully in the long run, eventually will decrease developer time. But those were some of the things they wanted me to remember. Their recommendations, as I talked to them about that, were number 1, don't rush the situation, because they had talked to me about some of the problems they'd had. Inform and include the businesses, property owners, and the citizens. A couple of the cities said that they had gone to great lengths to include their businesses. In fact, once they had included them, that turned into a very helpful thing. But their other cities had not done that, and it was a big backlash, and it was very difficult for them. Clearfield mentioned to me that it was absolutely worth every bit of time it took to include everyone. We already mentioned commercial regions consider that. And one of the options that came up, and this was actually from some of the city leaders, but actually from several of our residents, talked to me, and they said that if we could have a zoning option, that way not all of the businesses are put at a disadvantage that are current businesses. It could be done one development at a time, and that could be a very helpful thing. So you're having the advantage you hope for, but not causing the disadvantages to the other businesses. The business owners concerned that talked to me, of course, as we've heard already, non-conformance is the biggest issue. It is too cost prohibitive. Some of the quotes were, are you trying to drive us out? And then the other was, why are you laying this on us now? We are just trying to survive. So I think we've heard some of that before, but one of the things that they did say is possibly increased residential may help with business if the traffic's not too bad, but they were concerned about traffic because if traffic is too bad, then it actually will backfire and they won't be able to get business because it will be too hard for people to come in. I talked to 4 different developers. Some were very big time developers, and they said that they like FBC when there's no commercial requirement. In their mind, true FBC means there are no requirements. They can just have whatever works best for them. And they said that right now, density is of residential is it. They also said that the specific detail restrictions are very costly and prohibitive for design and creativity. So they didn't like that part of the form-based code. And again, residential is where the current market is, but commercial and retail is not really very well supported by the market. Some of the general comments just across all of the areas of people that I've been speaking with said that they do like the idea of sprucing up downtown, and they would like some increased retail restaurants. But again, they also had some concerns about losing our commercial opportunity. One thing that Clearfield said is that they've been so worried about certain developments because they thought, well, what if we allow this in and we lost that land for something that really would be better suited there? And that's where the 3-tiered zoning for them helped them feel more comfortable in that. The other thing that was brought over and over is to keep the community feel, because they feel Roy has something special. And it was nice to hear some of those people today talk about that as well. They're very concerned that that community feel is lost with form-based code high density. And if we could do something moderate, and that was something they said that most of them were okay with a careful mixed use. They liked the idea of the shops on the bottom. They didn't want a lot of high-rise density, but to do it very carefully. Some of the other general comments were they wanted to avoid the tunnel feel. They weren't very excited about a high buildings close to the sidewalk, traffic again, and the density. And most people said that looks weren't a priority for them, that the function was more important for them, that that was very important. It was interesting that trees and landscape came up, and I know we talked about this just briefly again. Their comments were that it looks nice at first, but very hard to maintain. And as I've talked to developers and businesses don't like trees for the fact that it blocks them. One of the businesses I spoke with out in another city said that they had trees there. Once they were pulled out, it increased their business significantly. They couldn't tell me an exact percentage. They felt it increased it at probably 20 to 30%, although they didn't have exact numbers. And there was a pretty good consensus that medians were not wanted. This was just a property owner's opinion of medians, and they were not for that for sure. Signage was definitely a very big issue. We have had some good input in regards to that. One of the things that was brought to place, though, is that one of the most critical components of the looks in form-based code is that signage issue. And so some have brought up the point, if we are not going to be able to have, anyway, if the signage component isn't a realistic part of form-based code, is form-based code itself a realistic option? We had the presentation from the Utah International Sign and how important that is for business success. One of the hard things, of course, during this time was the how to connect. You know, electronic meetings and communication is difficult to have the free flow. A lot of people have asked, please, for a face-to-face town hall, especially for something as major as this. And a lot of requests for increased interaction in that regard. This is just kind of a brief point of my conclusions as I worked on this. I think one of our first things is to work on the notification, informing and including business property owners and citizens. It is absolutely critical, whether we use a form-based code or a mixed use, whatever is allowed there, this will be a big change for Roy, and I believe that is one of the most important things we need to work on. Defining very specific goals that we hope to accomplish will be important. One of the first things that I've had a few people say, and this has been some engineers from other areas that are trying to, like even across states, they said areas with streets like ours, it's really unrealistic to have walkability as a goal. Now, maybe in a pocket, it's very nice, but to use that as a specific goal is not very realistic in a situation like this. And then, of course, the question is, can we modify the current form-based code to achieve the goals we decided upon? Some of the business owners said without leaving destruction in its way. And could we possibly consider another mixed-use option? And then just do it available for a project at a time. And I think through all of it, as I was talking to everyone, we definitely need more time. And if you do want any other information or any of the research, I would like to get some of the comments that I received, very well thought out comments, and I'll get that to you. But I don't know if there are any questions, but thanks for the time. And the mayor's got a lot of work. And by the way, Mayor, your handouts, I have no idea how you pump those out, but they've been very helpful. That side to side, the zoning was excellent. So any questions, great. Otherwise, I really appreciate your time. Thanks.
Okay, council, let me just start. We need to make some choices here in terms of what's next. We're sitting now at 8:15. The presentation that we are hoping to get through is going to take a little time. But let me just make a couple of comments here real quick. Okay, having gone through this research that you've done, Diane, I guess my question to you is, so what is your conclusion? What do you want us to take away from this this assessment you've done?
So those conclusions that I was talking about are, we definitely need more time. And I think one of the options that has come up that's been most plausible is to actually consider doing something on a project by project basis. Does that mean we can modify form-based code well enough for that? Or does that mean we can use the current code that we have, but to do it on an application basis and not to do it on a overall, we have this general zone, allow that zone to be the people that could apply for the mixed use zoning change, but not to mandate that for everyone, because that allows the current businesses to improve without the problems with the nonconformance that's been a very big issue. And it also allows those developers that want to have a project, a mixed use project, and they could be able to proceed, and then we could have some of those projects in the works. I've also talked to some of the smaller projects, and I believe we even have some codes that might work. And I don't know all these details still in the works of researching that. Maybe, for example, the hotel or something, we could do single installers, but that's what's kind of come up for me. And then certainly just the time to flesh that out so we can really adopt something that's realistic and helpful for all parties. We want to support our businesses as well as encourage the others.
Okay, you indicated more time, so I'm assuming. Do you have any idea? 6 months, 2 years? What are you looking at in terms of your vision of time?
Well, I think getting public input's going to be the key.
And what do you expect? But let me just ask this question, Diane.
Okay.
Public input. I think, for one, I have got lots of input, okay? And I've got people who say it's a good idea. I've got people who say it's not a good idea. Are you assuming then public input means is that they're going to help us write the document? Or do you think it's going to be an up or down decision? Because what I'm hearing from people is they don't like it or they like it, but they may not understand what it is they like and don't like. They just don't like it or they like it. So you help me understand exactly what you mean. We need to get public input, because I'm not sure what you want from the public.
I think a lot of that is informing them, educating them, and then getting their buy-in. Some of them may have
Diane, I think we lost you. You're on mute,
Jan.
Okay, you back, Diane? There you go.
Okay, there we are. That was weird. I think the buy-in is really important. And one of the big problems with having a code that mandates such major overhaul over such an area affects the people that are most involved, and that's our businesses. And we're trying to support and encourage business, get new business, not turn those away, or not to put more struggles more hurdles for them.
Okay, and you bring a good point, but let me offer you that. Having said that, you've seen the comparison in terms of what the current code says and basically what the form-based code. And when you look at the comparison, there is some changes, but it's not a whole lot of different changes. Do you believe that a lot of the business owners that you've been talking to haven't read our current Title 10 code, and because of that, they're making some assumptions? And based on those assumptions, let me give you a good example. I heard one individual make a comment that says, I don't want anything over, this is a result of your survey, I don't want anything over 2 stories, okay, anywhere on east, I think he said west of 1900. And yet today, the law says that we can actually put a 60-foot building there and there's not a thing we can do. I don't think, do you think they honestly knew that the law today says that we can put a 60-foot building there? Even though they
There were-
really just don't want, this has maybe a 2-story building? What's your thoughts on that?
I think there are a couple of things that I found in that regard. One of the things is that if they knew, which they probably, maybe these people didn't, I don't know, but if they did know about it, those buildings, they're hoping wouldn't be in consecutive, it wouldn't be like a tunnel. But one of the things that I've had several people that were actually members of the Focus Roy groups said that when they went through that, the Focus Roy vision said that there would only be 2 to 3 stories along 1900. And I think some people got that impression from the Focus Roy document, from being involved in those work sessions. And in fact, I received just yesterday an 18-page letter that was discussing some of the stuff, because he hadn't been involved in every single one of the Focus Roy meetings, and was very concerned because he and his fellow constituents that were citizens had said certain things. The leaders of the groups kind of ended up twisting what they were saying, and he didn't feel that they had been represented properly when the document came out. That was his, and then I had other people that were involved. So maybe those are 2 aspects of reasons that people are thinking that 2 to 3 stories would be it. That could be some of it. Maybe
Well,
3 reasons.
Okay, so let's
Okay.
just see if we can flush that. And this is the reason why I think this conversation is good now that you've done your research, I guess, is that the city council decides. If the answer to the question is that we don't want anything above 4 stories or 5 stories sitting up, then you decide that. If you go up there and simply says, I don't want a 12-story building anywhere in Roy, you decide that. And so I'm a little confused at this moment. I mean, what I heard you say, your conclusion would be is, let's isolate this form-based code into certain pockets around the city. So it's not going to be across the 1900 spectrum. You're wanting to basically do it in certain areas with the 1900. And then you want to get a whole lot of public engagement to be able to come up with what appears to be the right solution. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Actually, let me backtrack. The first thing you mentioned is I don't believe that we should assign any pockets to this. I believe that we should have a code that is available. So if a developer of this area that we choose, if it's the same area we're looking at now, says, I would really like to redevelop this land. I think mixed use is going to be just what we need. I would like to apply for a zoning change, just like the Terrys did tonight. I think that would be great. That's going to be something that's good for the market, something that's going to make it work for me.
And
That way it would be available, then they could move forward with that. That's
how do you do that?
Go ahead.
Because here's the piece that I don't think we really understand, and maybe it's important. Steve, you still on?
He is.
Steve, I have been told, okay, by a number of developers that before they ever come to you, they will oftentimes pull from the website, okay, our code, and they will go through our code. And you'll never know whether or not they've seen it or what they're talking about. And based on what they find from the code, then they may come to you and simply says, we are interested. Is that a fair statement?
Yes. I mean, we got to also understand that if the code is what they go by, and if it says they can't do a mixed use, why would they request a mixed use? But also the process to amend the ordinance is not overnight. It's got to go through a public hearing with the planning commission, then it's got to come to the city council. So we're talking a minimum of 2 to 3 months to get that change. Like most developers, time is money. And if the ordinance doesn't say mixed use is allowed, why would they spend another 3 months when they could go somewhere else?
That's
Okay.
why I think it's critical to get the input and make this document right now and let it be written in the book of Roy. I mean, one of the concerns I have is, and nothing against people doing the research, but I think if we're going to survey people and research stuff, why not come together as a council, a body, which we are, conduct a survey, we all give input on it. It goes out to everybody uniformly. The questions are neutral, asking input. I think that's more beneficial to us than each individual person going out and doing their own things, because what I hear is not going to be the same thing that somebody else hears. That's already proven. I've talked to several of the same people that other people have talked to, and I get different responses. So questioning makes a big difference of how you conduct a survey.
Okay.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Jan.
Can I have a comment? I just think that we are seeing a high amount of people that are suddenly concerned about the FBC. And so to me, that says that they're not 100% supporting it at this point. So we've got to continue to collect information in any way that the council comes together and decides is the best way, but continue to collect that input for as long as it takes. Now, for me, the people that I've asked, they know that document is available. They know that there's a big piece of a draft out there, but they're not going to go through 109 pages all at once. I think we need to collect it piece by piece by piece until they feel comfortable with it. I don't think they feel comfortable with us saying yes or no at this point. And when you ask Mayor for a timeline, I don't know that we can give a specific timeline until we feel like until everyone on the council feels like that time has passed when people are comfortable with it. I think for people going forward and saying, yeah, but I made some commitments to get some economic development. I understand that 100%, but to do it in the wrong way would be, to me, more detrimental to you personally, as well as to the city.
Okay, well, you bring up a good point, but here's the key. I want to make sure the council understands. I do have, and you had too, you had a document that was basically talks about this, and it was presented on January 10th, 2020. And you got also another document that was presented to you all on, I believe, the 5th, of February. The key to this conversation's got to be is we've had this thing in the council. We've had it in the council looking at this thing and looking at this thing.
For 4 months. But people have been looking at it in other cities for multiple years. We've had it for 4 months.
Okay, let me make sure you understand, Jan. The city has been working this thing for 4 years. 4 years.
They've been working something, but not necessarily this document. They've been working. Of
course not this document. But the point is, it's been leading to this document.
Hold on just one second, Mayor. I just want to bring an analogy here. You went through Clearfield City's form-based code, which they've approved, they've updated, and they've spent a lot of time, years, getting it there. It's within 90 or 95% of what ours is, and we've been working on it for 4 months. So can we take a little bit longer? I think not. Part of the thing of taking a little bit more time is educating people, because it's obvious that people are going off of fear and emotions. Oh, I'm going to have a 12-story building next to my property, and I don't want that. No, that was a jumping off point. We can have a 4-story. We can have a 5-story. We don't have to have medians down the middle of 1900. And I know that's one thing that people have played on. Well, you're going to have a median down the middle of 1900. No, that was a draft. That was a thought that was brought up during all this. We've not approved that. So to tell people that they're going to have a 12-story building next to their property, or they're going to have a median down 1900 is not factual information. We can make it what we want, but I think
I agree with that, Joe. But how do we get what they really do want? I think we need to go long enough that before we ever move forward on it, that we need to, that there needs to not be this emotional upheaval. That's
there needs to be an education, because people need to understand the current code and whatever we end up proposing. I'm not even saying what's on writing right now, but I think there's a lot of information that people don't have. And so they glean to one thing that plays on their emotion. And somehow we've got to remove emotion. I don't care if we hire Dan Jones and Associates for $3,000 to do a survey. I would like a neutral based survey that we collect.
I'm fine with that.
Well, plus the people like the 30% change. That's the people I've talked to.
that needs to be changed. I mean, they're worried about doing but like the McDonald's lady said, like Joe said, the change doesn't have anything to do with inside the building, just the outside, right? And so
Correct.
And see,
Yeah.
they've got to
The
understand
inside
that.
they don't know that.
They've got to understand that before they can quit
Right.
being emotional, or they're gonna hang us on it.
We had people think that the city's buying up property and gonna build streets. We're not buying up property. We're not building streets. If a developer needs a street to do their development, they pay for it. They pay for curb, gutter, sidewalk, sewer,
Right.
water. And then when the development's all done, I think, I can't remember the term Matt used, but they turn it over to the city. So we would have some ongoing maintenance, but none of the upfront development and building is our cost. People just don't understand that. Somehow we've got to educate people. That's the part that I think needs to go forward.
I would agree with you, Joe.
And what about if this form-based code wasn't passed, say within 6 months, a year, whatever, and a hotel developer come in, they could still do the hotel, right? We could do it one project at a time, or we'd have to have that approved before they built the hotel.
You
It
could put a
depends- it
5-story
depends on
hotel
where.
right now and not do anything else, but it's the
Yeah.
mixed use and the combined effort is what we're looking for.
Here's a point I think, Ann, might help this conversation. The council has within its power to simply go up there and says, you know what? I'm going to take the entire sign ordinance out of the form-based code and I'm going to throw it out and I'm going to use the existing code.
We spent a
Right.
lot of time a few years back on a sign ordinance. Let it stay. Don't put it in the.
Throw it out. We could go in there right now and we could
Mhm.
basically say, you know what? What I'd like to do is I want to take the street types that's currently in there. We already have that in the transportation plan. Throw it out. Just take it completely out. If you don't want basically 33%, my recommendation is make it 85%. You can do that with a stroke of a pen.
Right.
The very issues that they're talking about, you as a council write the proposal. You as a council decide. If you don't want a 12-story building, then why don't we just stop spooking the herd? And why don't we go up there and just simply says, you know what? We're not going to allow anything over 6 stories anywhere in this city. And why
Right.
don't we start going up there and making and calming the people rather than creating what we've got? Because here's what we don't have. What we don't have is anything that's solidified within the council.
Right.
We don't have anything. All we have is we're trying to work something. And yet I'm suggesting to you is that we can do all those changes. And if you don't like a section, throw it out. And I think what that will do for you would be is it calms the people like the McDonald's that says, hey, you leave 30% in there or 33%, man, we're just in trouble. You know what? You make a good sense.
Right.
Let's make that 85% and see if that's workable. If you basically go up there and simply says, and by the way, the form-based code says, if that road is not over 80 feet wide, which none of the streets in there except UDOT streets is 80 feet wide, then I'm indicating you ain't gonna put that line, that narrow beam down the center. It ain't gonna happen because it doesn't meet the current form-based code as written. So I say, let's take all that ambiguity out of the scaring the people and let's simply say, you know what? Okay, we got something already existing in our code today that we can use. Let's take this stuff out and let's just use it a reference back to the existing code. And I think you'll find it. Right now, you can put a 5-story building right there next to residential, and there's not a darn thing anybody in this room right now can do. It's going to happen if we got a request. So if you don't want a 5-story building sitting there, and that's the way the law reads today, then maybe we need to be talking about with the people that says, well, if that's not what we're going to do, maybe you need to start talking about changing it. And
Well,
I think
even
we can
if
do that.
you change, even if we do the form-based code and we take out everything that we don't like and we change it all,
Mhm.
and then something comes up, we can still go in and change again, right?
You can change it, but once Steve gets an applicant that simply says, this is what I want to do, you can't go back there after they put that application into Steve's office and simply
Well,
say,
yeah.
change.
Well, right. I mean, after, we give somebody the okay to do something,
Uh,
we have to go by what we say.
You have to
But-
go with what you approve.
Right, right.
Well,
But if
I
somebody else
talked
came in and proposed something, you know, and we could maybe change before, you know, we told it was okay, or I don't
I
know.
talked to a council member of South Ogden, and that's one of the problems they have with their form-based code. It's now 4-ish years old, and they've had to make means or adjustments for incoming businesses. They really need to go back and update it, just like Clearfield just did. It tends to be a living document. The thing I learned from Clearfield is they recommend updating it, whether it be every 6 months or every year.
They
It's
said,
never gonna be-
they said quarterly they've been doing it, Joe.
Yeah,
That's what
quarterly.
we heard at.
In
National-
Washington, yeah.
Okay. But here's my point to the conversation would be is that you can go in there and simply say, I'm sure they did. I'm sure they basically went up there and says, here's our form-based code. This is what the contractor provided to us. And what they did is they tweaked that. Wouldn't it have been interesting had these cities that struggled so much just simply said, you know what? We've already got an existing ordinance that references what they need to do and simply removed all of that out of it and relied upon what is already standardized in the city. And if you do that, then my opinion would be is that all of these issues, all the issues I've heard the people talking about, all the issues that basically referenced here, it's all basically been resolved because we rely upon the existing ordinance to justify it. And if the issue is they don't like the existing ordinances, then fine, I'm okay with that. Change it. But
What if
we've
we
got
use
to have
RDA
something.
money and conduct a survey? Have Dan Jones and Associate do a survey.
Well, you can do a survey if you can decide what it is you want. But I'm at this point not sure exactly the council knows what they want. What I got from Diane's assessment would be is, if I was Diane and she did this assessment, I'm not so sure Diane would basically vote for this. Because everything she's pointed out there, everything I've seen it, I can't say everything, maybe 95% of that is basically says the form-based code is not a good thing for Royce City. And so to me, what she's basically saying is it, and I think a lot of what she's pointing out is the people just don't know. So the
But we
question
have
is gonna be,
developers right now that own property in Roy that are waiting for a form-based code
I
so they
know.
can start development.
I know. And
Some
so
of that is waiting for mixed use. Some of that is waiting for mixed
well,
use.
then here's what I'll
Talk
do.
to,
Here's what I'll
and
do
they're
for you,
using,
Diane. You bring up a great
Pardon?
point. Let
It's
me share a
school.
thought with you. Just let me give you a thought. You
Uh-huh.
go into Farmington at the farm station and you look at their code, which they
Mhm.
build on, and they don't talk about form base. It's all mixed use.
yep,
And it's chapter 13, okay, I think, no, chapter 11 in their code. They don't talk about form base, but I dare you to read that document and tell me if it is in fact doesn't talk exactly, I wouldn't say word for word, but for the most part, of the things that are counted in this form-based document. So here's what I would suggest. If the council's position would be is form-based code, not only in our context, but even the context of people we talk to is a 4-letter word, then remove the word. Remove it. Give it another name. That's exactly what other cities did. They just simply renamed it, if that's what it takes. And that if that makes the council happy, we refer everything we can back to the existing ordinance, then we just simply call this chapter 13 in our titled laws. And this one basically deals with this area. What I would ask of you would be is, what areas then, if it's not going to be the city, then I would recommend you go back to this document I sent to you. And I would ask you to go in there and simply says, okay, then what areas do you want? The only feedback I got is that they had 2 council members simply says, I think we need to take the entire north end of the proposed area and chop it off, take it out of the game. Then I would suggest to you is come back with what you think is right. Give us an idea when. Come back in terms of telling us what you think the right height of the buildings are. Give us something that we can do. And if there's something here, then maybe, rather than maybe wasting, I shouldn't say wasting, investing the next 6 months, 6 years in trying to come up with something, maybe what we can in the next 3, 4, 5 months is have something we can take back to the public and educate them with. Because my concern right now is you take the document we've got right now and decide to teach the residents about this document, the first thing they're triggering on is I don't like 12-story buildings. I don't like these mediums down the middle of the highways. I definitely don't like 30%. And so rather than going up there and learning about what form-based code can be, what we have presented to them is what it should not be. And you cannot learn if you're basically going to force something they don't like to taste down their mouth. I say, give us something you think you can work with, then let's take it and educate the population of whether it's workable. And they may very well come in with some other ideas that we can use. But if you
Is
don't
there any
do that-
way, Mayor, in doing that, that we could do it a piece at a time so we're not presenting them with a whole elephant?
Well, that's not a bad idea, Jen, but I'll tell you what I'd like you to consider. I'd like you to take half of that form-based code that's in there right now and basically throw it out. Use the existing ordinances for sign ordinances, to the administrative ordinances, to the street type ordinances. They're already in our code. Throw all of that out. Take this 100-some-odd page document and get it down to 30, and let's see if we can't work it. If you will at least walk away from this conversation saying that Steve and I and whoever else Steve knew, if we can come back and shape you a document that is not 110 pages that people can't swallow, but maybe 30 pages that maybe, just maybe, you might be able to ease through, then maybe that's a document we can go with.
The other thing I would ask you to do as you're working on that, and I think that's a great idea, Mayor. I appreciate all the work that Steve puts into it, but the other thing I would ask him to do is put it into layman's language. I mean, I understand that Steve has spent years and years and years understanding this, and I appreciate that out of him, and that's why I turned to him for a professional opinion. But I don't understand that when I'm trying to talk to my neighbors about it, and when my neighbors are trying to talk to me. It's got to be, you know, when they talk about setbacks and frontage and what those width of the frontage is, we got to understand that. And I don't think I'm necessarily stupid, but I'm certainly, that's not my area of expertise. So I've got to have it in something that I can see and understand.
A table of definitions.
I don't like that. And then I can ask them, what is it about it that you don't like? Because as they look at that document right now, they don't know if they like it or don't like it.
Right, because it's too hard to understand. I
Right.
look at it, and that's why I have Matt at my house. I'm like, Matt, now what does that say? I read it and I don't understand it that much neither. I understand some of it, but some of it, it's just way over my head, you know, so I'm having to ask Steve about it too.
Well, one
Let me
thing
ask-
you need to accomplish, Mayor, sooner than later, and council members, is we've got to get some type of mixed use in here, because we have some developers that are ready to move forward with mixed use.
Mhm.
So I don't know how you accomplish that in the process of doing this, but I don't think we have 6 months to put some of these developers off. If they're willing to invest in Roy right now, and
If they're willing to invest in Roy, they're willing to wait. I believe that.
I don't
they're
know, in
not-
this current economy, I don't know if that's the case.
I don't agree. And especially not now. My corporate friends right now are telling me they're scared out of their minds to invest in anything right now. And I think if we push this through, our citizens are going to say we did it behind their back.
Right. Well, because of the virus right now, people have, you know, their
And our
priorities.
corporate investors are the very
Right.
same way right now. They're
I mean,
scared.
we
They're
have
not.
one investor that has earnest money down on a piece of property right now to build a sizable investment that somehow we've got to be able to accommodate that.
Okay, so here's the task for you. Okay, and we'll make it. And Matt, Steve, Andy, let's talk about this as we can tomorrow. Council, we'll take an action on the part of the city, and we'll see if we can frame up something that's going to be a little easier to work with. I need to send you some very specific requests for you to provide feedback if we're going to make this work. Meaning
Okay.
is, if you go up there and basically we says, and you heard it best, if the business are scared of that 33% or that 30% in terms of what we call legal non-conforming and has to change, then we need to get your input of what you think is reasonable. If you.
Well, and we
will-
need to be able to ask people in order to do that. We need to be able to ask them and be able to use that information that we get when we ask them.
Okay, then here's what we'll do. We'll structure the comment to you so it explains what we're talking about, and then you can do your homework. The other piece is you've got to give us some feedback on building height. You're scaring a bunch of people out there when you keep talking about 12 stories. But I
That's
have,
what-
no. That's what the book says, but every one of you, maybe not you, Jan, because I haven't heard, but I got word from Matt from you. I'm telling you, every council member says they will not look and will not accept a 12-story building in Roy City. That's exactly what they said. Let's don't spook the herd. Give us a height you think is workable. And if the answer is, we ain't going to do anything above 6 stories, then you tell us that, and we'll put this in this dummy document we're working.
Well, what I need to be able to do is ask my citizens, my people, the people along 1900, what would you like to see? Now, we've only heard from one that said, I don't want anything higher than, what was it, 2 stories west of
stories.
1900.
Mhm.
I
Right.
get that's not
Yeah,
legit.
That's, no,
That doesn't make sense. But we need to be able to ask them, what would you think would be viable?
Okay.
To get a
And
viable hotel, we're
even-
gonna have 4 to 5 stories, which we can do right now under the current code.
right, a
That's great,
hotel.
and that's-
Maybe we
Leave
want to
out.
change the current code. That's what the mayor is saying. Maybe they don't want that. Just because the current code, maybe the current code isn't right for them either, Joe.
Right.
No, we know it's not. That's why we're trying to come up with some changes.
But please don't misunderstand what I'm about to tell you. That code has been in Roy's ordinances for years and years and years.
I
And yet
understand it hasn't been
But-
used.
That's the point. No developer has walked into Roy City and said in the last 20 years, I want to put a 4-story building in Roy City, except along that corridor, except the new buildings we see up there that are up there on by 4,000. And those are relatively new buildings. So here's a code that has been in place for years and years and years, and nobody has approached Roy City and says, we want to build. And yet we see vacant lot after vacant lot. And I'm talking about buildings that are vacant, not necessarily the lots that are vacant, and yet they don't come. But here's what's different today. We have developers ready to invest millions of dollars that will generate thousands of property tax opportunities and revenue and sales tax ready now to move and do something. Now, if the answer from the council is we do it in pockets, then let's go ahead and have that conversation. I think that's a fair conversation. But you got to basically help us move on this, or I'm telling you, they're going to look somewhere else. And the
Well-
window of opportunity will go. Now, maybe that's 6 months out. Maybe it's 8 months out. But trust me, Jan, with this comment, they will go somewhere else.
Mayor, can I ask one question though? You're saying they can right now do the development that they want to do. Why
Yes.
aren't
Because they can't get the height they can't. If they wanted to put a glass front building, a modern building in Roy's ordinance will never allow that to happen. It does not allow metal and glass front buildings.
So
It
why can't they
doesn't-
ask for a variance? Because
minute.
that's what everybody's saying is a variance.
But here's the point I
Mayor,
want to
can I-
share to you. You're
Mayor, can
making the assumption that these people are basically coming to asking for a variance. I told you a few minutes ago, and Steve confirmed that. These
Steve wants
people,
to talk.
I'm going to let him talk in a second. These people will look over our code first to find out if they can work with Roy City. And if Roy City is not one that work with the current ordinances, they're not going to hold their breath for the next 6-8 months as it goes through planning commission and it tries to solve this.
Can
Sorry,
you tell us,
Steve?
oh, sorry, can you tell us what some of those are specifically? We keep hearing about these things, these like a carrot out there.
Not in
but
a
it'd be
public
good for
meeting,
us-
not
Okay,
in a public meeting. But if you
right.
step into my office or you call me tomorrow, I have no problem sharing with you everything that we know. I keep no secrets.
okay.
Yeah, I
Great.
want to know what the obstacles.
Yeah.
Just a couple clarifications. First, start with the variance request. In order to get a variance, the applicant has to, well, the hearing officer has to answer yes to 5 questions. The first one, what is the hardship of the land You can't abide by the ordinance. Height change is not a hardship of the land.
Right.
That's a hardship of the code that they want to do something different,
That's
not
right.
the land. So the first question, they can't even get past that one. So it's not a variance request. Now, you could say the ordinance, within the ordinance, 5, 6 stories, whatever it is that comes out, and then make it conditional use. The developer wants to go to 7 or 8. If it's 1 or 2 stories more, they could get a conditional, but you, the council, set those conditions. The developer, you, the council, you can say it's 6 stories is what we want, but you can go up to 8 if these parameters are met. Then the developer knows that, okay, if I want to do those extra things, I can now have extra floors. If I don't, then I'm stuck at whatever the height limit is. But a variance will never work. It's $250 down the drain that they will never get back, and the hearing officer's wasted his time. And
So it's a conditional use. Maybe the term would be more of a conditional use versus a variance, is what you're
right,
saying.
yes. And
Okay.
again, you guys can set those conditions.
Mhm.
Now, they can't be outrageous, this, whatever your concerns are, they need to be able to be mitigated. But you guys can set concerns. Now, I know there's a few other things I wanted to pipe in on, but can't remember. Oh, medians along 156. Even if we passed it saying we want them, unless UDOT agrees, they will never happen.
Right.
Even if we wanted them, if UDOT says no, it ain't gonna happen. If you go downtown Ogden on Washington Boulevard, Ogden proposed to have a median from 2200 South or 22nd Street to 28th Street. Right now they're in between what? 24th and 26th. They're nowhere near what Ogden was really wanting. They're nowhere near the height. They're nowhere near what they were, but UDOT said, okay, we'll do that. But it was under their terms, not Ogden City's. So there's a lot of things that are ifs and whats and maybes. I'd be willing to sit down with each of you and have a Zoom meeting with your constituents that have these concerns with you, so I can try to take planner jargon into layperson knowledge, and try to have them understand it, so they're hearing it from the same person and not your interpretation of what my explanation was. That way you guys can be involved, but yet if they have questions, they can come to the one person that is reading the code anyway.
It's a good point, Steve, and it might be a resource you want to draw from. But let me offer one last thought in reference to this, because I know we're getting close to 9 o'clock and we need to get you guys home. Well,
What do you mean
some
I
of you
am?
We are home.
are already home. But let me just make this comment. And a couple of you made comment on this, and so something you need to be thinking about. The strategy has always been the council approves the code, and it is the planning organization, it is the planning commission that helps the execution of your approved code. Sometimes, and what I heard from this is you kind of wanted the applicant to come back to the council. So you're going to have to make a choice here. How much of this do you want to basically give to the planning commission and let them do their job? And how much of this you want to retain as you go into this conversation and this process? Because if you're talking about making a lot of adaptations, and you want these adaptations, and you only want the council to basically make those approval, then your calendar is going to get busy. But if you can set a standard that you says, here's what I want, which is typically what you do in your ordinances. I expect the planning commission to execute to exactly what we've approved in the ordinance. Then they can do the small variances. They can handle that, but they execute your decision. Now, maybe in the beginning, your position would be I want to have a lot more touch and feel on this because it is new and it is important. You need to make that choice, and that has to be in the ordinance. But at some point in time, that ordinance or whatever we do has to be basically compiled to the point that the planning commission can do their job and move on. And all you have to do is just simply give them the ordinance, they can do that. Steve?
Well, if it comes back to, want the first couple projects to approve and it meets the ordinance, all of you have to be willing to say yes to it if you don't like it. And that's half the reason a few years ago that some aspects were taken away from the council so that the politicalness of things don't get you in trouble. Because if someone comes up and your constituents and it says, I can have a 6-story building, yet everybody that lives around it says, no, it can only be a 4, and you deny the application based on public clamor, not only is the city held liable for a lawsuit, each
right.
individual person who voted no for that is also held liable, personally liable. So I would strongly not want that. Again, I'm here to try to protect you as individuals and you as a city from those type of things, because there are developers out there that if it's not written in law and you change it willy-nilly at the meeting because you don't necessarily like it, or 30 people show up and disagree, those lawsuits do happen quite quickly.
And that's a critical point, and that's how other cities got themselves in trouble, and why we basically almost 5 years ago, we basically changed a lot and pushed a lot of the requirements to the Planning Commission, because Planning Commission is not political. They simply look at the content of what you approved and they execute to the content you approved. That's the difference. You're going to have a political perspective. They cannot. And it's because they don't is why we don't get the lawsuits filed against us. So here's the takeaway so far. I'm not going to spend any more time and try to run through this presentation. You have copies of it. I'm going to sit down with staff and we're going to try to frame up something here that we can work with, and we're going to send that to you. I'm going to ask you before we send that to you to answer some critical questions on, and we'll try to definitize those as best we can so you can talk to the constituents, you can get some feedback, but we need to have you give us your input. Then we can frame a document, a draft document that is meaningful, that is close to what we want, and then let's see what we got to do next to be able to figure out how we're going to do this. But in the meantime, then I'm going to tell you right now, Roy City has got to deal with, I can't say applicants, but definitely strong, interested organizations who would like to do something in downtown Roy. We have to do something, because my fear, and Joe, you know this, we talked about this in economical development, is that if they basically do not like, or they think they can't hold their breath, they will simply walk away. And if you don't think that they can't walk across, instead of dropping down 5,600 onto 1,900, which is what they want, they can just simply go north on that road and go into Riverdale, because there's a nice piece of property sitting up there by that Hotel 6 place up there. Trust me, it's close enough that they can basically accommodate, and Riverdale is very open to want to take those projects from Roy. So we've got to at least entertain the ones who have an interest. If they're talking about bringing a theater to Roy, we want to encourage that. If they want to basically talk about using the recently approved hotel package that we put out there, and they are talking about that, then we need to basically start to see how we can get them in play and see if in fact we can work under the existing code while you come up with some ideas of what you think the next codes are going to be.
Another thing to think about, Mayor, and this isn't fear driven, but it is reality. Sunset was just awarded grant money to develop a form-based code. They will, in the near future, have their own freeway interchange and have an entrance to Hill Air Force Base right there. And when they shift the freeway to the east, there will be a chunk of commercial developable property right there that we want to stay ahead of this to attract these people and not allow them to go somewhere else.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying let that railroad our decisions, but I think we have to have that in the back of our mind, that that could potentially open up people going to other cities.
Right. Absolutely true.
One last thing from me, and then I'll shut up. just so everybody knows, Falcon Hill project, which is that private development on Hillfield property, Roy City or myself is part of their planning commission, so to speak.
Mhm.
I have a meeting on Thursday to look to approve another building up there that's not just the same size as the one that's being built, but big. So again, there are developers that are out there that are spending lots of money. And I don't see anything in here that says we can deny it. So there'll be another, I can't remember, 250,000 square foot office building being built.
That's right.
Can I ask a question? Is that Falcon Ridge the one that's us or the Falcon Hill that's down? And then I actually have a couple other points I want to make.
Well,
But
the Falcon Ridge, Falcon Hill, Clearfield, Sunset, Roy, it's all the same.
Same group.
so that building would that building be next to Northrop Grumman now, or is that just somewhere along that corridor there?
It's on the north side, yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And I
And not-
also,
And
Go
not
ahead.
only that, Diane, but just so you understand, under the agreement that they have on the Falcon Hill, if they wanted to basically put a hotel on the north end,
yeah,
they have every right to put a hotel there. They did it on the south end. And if we can help them to simply says it's a better choice to come into Roy and put a nice 4 or 5-star hotel in Roy, the revenue would be significant to Roy. But by the same token is they have there's nothing in their policy that they can't take that and they can just simply put
Yeah.
it on the inside of that gate.
well, I'm glad that we can proceed with that. But a couple of things I just wanted to make, to mention is I think one of the most important things that I have found throughout all of the people I've talked to is I wanted to know what the problems, the possible pitfalls were, because if we're going to be making a code, or if we're going to be trying to do something, I would like to know what some of those problems are and be able to preempt them. As we do this code, I think we need to be looking at what those pitfalls are, so we can hopefully make a code that can alleviate or avoid those sorts of things. And then I think it would be very important to maybe start with a small area. Maybe the area that we think is most interested in possible development, start with that. Let's see how it goes. Then extend the area, because that way we aren't having a developer that says, oh, I'm going to hurry and come in here and do this. And we haven't had a chance to kind of work through the bugs and stuff like that. I think that would be very helpful, because then it allows us a lot of information and allows us to proceed in a way that could be helpful and take away or decrease some of the detriments and some of the problems.
Okay, that's a good comment. Okay, other thoughts?
I would just like to, I don't have my, I'm mute. Am I on? I just wanted to get everything worked out, because I do want a hotel in Roy. I do. I want things to move forward with Roy. I mean, I think we need change. We need a nice sit-down restaurant. I think once we get a hotel, I mean, I know our high school would probably use that hotel for lots of different, things, especially if they had a big conference room and we could hold our police benefit dinners and everything. If we have to go outside the city to do everything, because we don't have anything to accommodate anything like that in Roy.
That's right.
So I want to keep the money in Roy, and but I want all the citizens to, I want all these changes made so they're not afraid. And I think the height and the 30%, change of their buildings and the medians in the road and all those things that they don't understand. I think that if we make all those changes and put it, like Jan said, in terms that we can understand, so we can explain it to them, then I think that they would, be on board. And because I do want the city to move forward. I know we need the tax base, so we don't have to raise our taxes. And I love Roy, and I think those would be great things for Roy. So we don't have to go to Layton or 21st Street. We can stop in Roy and spend our money here.
Great comment.
You made a nice summary, Ann, of the things that people are concerned about. So I think as we read through the code, that's going to be a really good area for us to focus on. The other thing that a lot of people talked about was the option of only having a certain number of building types that they could use. The mayor once said, maybe we could just change the wording and say, these are some ideas, and then let the planning commission do it. I like that, because I've been getting a lot of feedback that people want more options. They don't want to have it limited. They want creativity. They want developers and architects
Right.
to be able to do something that comes to their mind that fits the development and isn't restricted.
Okay, good comment. Okay, any other comments on this? Okay, we're gonna get some things put together and we're gonna get back with you. And then we're gonna ask you in very short time to provide some feedback on the things that we need feedback so we can formulate a document. And then from that, we'll go basically see what we can provide to you and see if we got something we can work with. So it's gonna come at you, but please understand, here's what's also coming at you. We do have this issue we have to address. We have a budget and you've got to look at that document. You will get it next month and we have a very short timeline to work through that. Right now we have a general plan amendment. And if we're going to make major adjustments to the general plan amendment that were approved last year, then I'm telling you, we got some conflicts with Senate Bill 34 that was approved and the law that's in there that simply says we have some things to do. And we still, in large part because the Planning Commission forwarded a document to us dealing with the train station, we cannot ignore the train station. The train station has to be addressed. You got three choices. Either accept it as written, change it, or simply don't accept it, but we cannot ignore it. We have to work it. That is a requirement for us. All of that has to be, and oh, by the way, we got to do this under this incredibly difficult time with this pandemic and try to do as much as we can in these kind of mediums. So have patience with us. We'll do the best we can, but we're going to need you guys to step up as we start putting information to you to give us some feedback so we can get something formulated. Fair enough?
Right.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Any last comments?
Well, I just somehow we've got to get out to our public that this is what we're doing, that we are trying to move forward and we're trying not to do anything under this very stressful time of theirs. Because I really do believe that they think we're going around it by doing it without them. So
Jan, you're absolutely correct. We've been very transparent. If you can give me some ideas, how can we make that work for us? The only thing that I can honestly say that will work is a town hall meeting. And right now, you're not going to see a town hall meeting where you can bring everybody together until sometime in September, October, maybe. And my biggest fear is what they're talking about. We could see a second wave of this.
I agree. I understand
And
that.
if that happens, it could be worse than what we're dealing with right now. So this is very unstable. And what we need to do is we'll just do the best we can. But if you've got some ideas of how to get the message out, how we can get the people more engaged, then I surely recommend doing that.
I'm not opposed to spending some money on a, you know, once you get some stuff, what parts are they not liking? You know, if you wanted to do a survey that way, citywide, however Joe was recommending it, but be specific about this is the part I don't like. And
We
then
can use
we
RDA
could
money.
adjust that.
We can use RDA money too, so it's not coming out of our general budget of the city. So that helps.
We have to know what our citizens want or they're gonna hang us.
Right.
I agree. But you said it at the very beginning in this conversation, we've got to educate the people till they understand what they want.
Yep.
My biggest concern right now is that what we're doing is that we're feeding on fear. We're feeding on fear.
Well, they've got to be able to understand the language for one thing, because I can hand that document to them and sit with them. I can't explain it well enough to have them not be fearful of it because it's not in their language. It's like when a physician talks to me, they got to talk in my language or I'm scared.
Right.
Then I would say then let's
Right.
capitalize on your expertise, Jan. You're a highly educated individual. Then I say to you would be is if you can understand it based on the language you feel comfortable with, then can we make the assumption is most of the residents would understand it?
Sure, or at least I can explain it to them. But currently I can't look at it and understand it or explain
Okay.
it to them.
then that's our effort. We have got to, as a city, to try to provide some governance to you and to the council that the public can understand. The problem with Joe and me is this. Joe and me have been through 2 years. I've been 2 years in the planning commission. I understand what the language is.
Right.
So I understand that, but I'm assuming the general public doesn't, and you're absolutely correct. So you have got to help us steer this document in terms that the layman person can understand it. And if you can do that, then I will indicate to you, I think we win.
Right,
Okay.
because people
we're
that have asked me, I've told them, when they asked me to explain it to them, I said, I need to learn I need to learn about it before I explain it to you, because there's a lot I don't know, but I promise I will find out and let you know. And they're like, okay.
Steve, thank you. You've tried hard to explain it to me. I understand that. So I'm
Right.
definitely not pointing
Can
fingers.
you
at
write
you.
us an
I think
FTC book for dummies?
Yeah, I need one of those.
Jan and Ann and Diane, I think the great thing about this technology that we're experiencing now is if you have a group of people that want it explained, we can set up a Zoom meeting with you, me, and all of them, and I can try to answer all their questions and bring it
Exactly.
terminology
Okay.
to understand.
Yeah,
I'm willing to.
because
For.
what most everything pointed out tonight, everybody who spoke, it's developed, a property owner, a business owner, were all the things that we want to change,
Mhm.
the 30%, the mediums, the height of the buildings, all those things. And I think that if we change those, those were the main things that all the business owners brought up.
Mhm.
And like Jan had pointed out to me, if we had the form-based code right now, we wouldn't be having that discount tire be the Head Start program, because they wouldn't have been able to probably afford to go in and do that building. So those are things that we have to kind of think about also.
I agree, but you control all that, Ann. You by your own approval, control that. I think what the city needs to do is explain what the 30% means in a language by which you feel comfortable with. And if 30% is not the right answer, what is the right answer? And you feel comfortable that's acceptable. And we can do that. But all I'm asking is there will come a point when the council has got to step up.
Right.
And you've got to basically says, we are ready and we're ready to make some decisions, because the city has to move forward and we cannot do this without you. It
Right.
can't happen. You're the policymakers.
Well,
Right.
in the time, I think we need to address the two issues that I'm hearing. I'm hearing there's two developers that are currently concerned. So without changing the whole code, what can we do to address them, Joe?
Well, I don't know what it would take to do it without doing the whole code, but you've got to be able to get mixed use in, you've got to be able to get the building type in, and you've got to be able to get the height in. Height, we know we're probably there under our current code, but mixed use and building type, we're not. And so do we want to make the effort to do that for one piece of property or try to garner a bigger section? I don't know.
I'd rather do it for one piece of property and not rush it than do it for the whole code and be backtracking all the way. That's my own opinion.
Well, I agree with that, Jan, but
I
I will tell
agree
you,
too.
I will tell you right now is the location of these particular projects, and right now it looks like 3 are not in the same area. They just happen to be close to 1900.
I kind of like Diane's thought is maybe we just, for instance, zone east side of 19, north of 56 to Riverdale, just an area, doesn't have to be that. And that's what gets developed under this, whatever code we happen to be. And then leave the west side of 19 and south of 56 kind of alone, see how it develops. I mean, that's just one thought. Now, granted, as the mayor said, not all the projects that they're talking about are right in that area.
Well, I thought only one of those 3 was.
That's all
Am I-
it is.
Yeah,
You're right.
So those are,
Yeah.
you can say,
They're
okay,
at opposite
we
ends of
rezone-
the area.
we just rezoned from 57 to 55 and west of I-15 to where, you guys can make those choices, but
Yeah.
you have options, as the mayor has said many a times. It's your code. Write it as you want, not necessarily what, South Salt Lake may want or South Ogden may want. It's what do you as Roy citizens and you as city council want. You've got, 9 planning commissioners that voiced what they want. So it's what you want, not what other people think Roy should be.
Right. You're absolutely right, Steve. So here's the key then. We'll
Well,
do
I
our
wanna
part.
what my constituents want. I don't want to have it be what I want.
Right.
And
Okay.
you are the one that votes.
Yeah, but it's your decision. At the end of the day, you decide.
Yep.
Whether you take it by survey, or you take it says, I want 100 inputs and I take anybody, the ones that are over 51%, that's the ones I'm going to go with. I'll let you make that choice, that you decide. I will indicate to you is if there's any meeting you need to attend, please be to the end of May meeting. I'm not sure what the date of that is. They're going to present what 5600 is going to look like. And you need to know what that is.
Okay.
And where is that meeting at?
It's going to be right here, right in your
Right,
house.
probably right in your room.
Okay.
Okay. Any other
19.
comments, questions?
So is
No.
what they're doing on 5600 right now have to do with what they're going to do in the future?
No,
Is
what they're doing right now, Ann, is there's a North Davis effect. Actually, Joe is on he's on that group. Joe, go ahead and explain what's happening on 56 as we speak.
So what's going on 5600? It's going to go from basically the overpass. There'll be one section on the west side of the overpass, but it's going to go from there to 1900. They're putting in a new sewer line. The current
Oh.
sewer line that's in there is aged and they've already lined it once and the liner's leaking. So they're putting a bigger sewer line in, which will not only fix the problems it has, but it'll also give us capacity for bigger buildings and developments on 1900.
Right. That's
So-
probably a good idea.
One of the problems they run into, and that's why it's got bigger than what we anticipated, when UDOT put in the overpass, they had to reroute, don't laugh, Mayor, they had to reroute our water line. Well, unfortunately, they put the water line next to the sewer line and it's against code right now.
Oh,
And so there's going to be a battle back and forth of who's responsible for this. Because of that, they couldn't tear the sewer line out without moving our water line. That is why you see the big black pipe going up the gutter and they're tying in temporary services for everybody along there. That is so they can rip out our water line, the sewer line, put in a new sewer line and replace our water line.
oh, geez.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's
And
about a-
it's a battle, who's going to pay for that, Joe?
Ah.
yeah, it's about a $400,000 oops.
For the city to have to pay for?
We're
Well,
not sure.
We're not
Yeah.
sure.
Oh,
We got to work it.
Theoretically, we weren't the contractor that did 5600, UDOT was, so we believe as the city that UDOT's responsible for it. The sewer
Right.
board, the sewer department says, we don't care who put it in, it's not where it should be, so we have to move it, and who knows what's gonna happen from here.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's just gotta be moved because they can't replace the sewer line with our water line right next to it. There's supposed to
Yeah.
be, I can't remember what the buffer is, but there's supposed to be a significant distance between the two, and they're touching each other in places.
Ooh.
Well, that would make sense. I don't want my
Yeah.
sewer line
Yeah.
touching my water line.
Yeah.
Agreed.
that's-
Okay, council.
Yeah.
Hey,
Thank
we
you.
appreciate it. We've got some things we got to work on. We'll take some actions, keep you posted on this. Obviously a good conversation. I hope you walked away from this meeting with the feeling we got some things accomplished tonight.
I
Any
think it
last,
was good.
any last comments?
Nope. Thank
Okay.
you.
Do we
I
have a,
move that we adjourn.
thank you. Okay, do I have a second on
I
that?
vote we
Oh,
adjourn
yes.
too.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. You guys have a great day.
Aye
Okay.
and goodbye.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, see
You
ya.
guys have a great night.
Bye.
Thank you.
Stay safe, stay healthy.